So this video is not necessarily training our dogs because my dogs went outside to play in the snow, but I do actually wanted to take a second to talk about something, maybe multiple things, but I mentioned arousal levels a lot, and I wanted to make sure I have a clear explanation for what that means. Arousal is physiological. It's a response. It's a response to stimuli that might make us excited or scared or stressed. But it's all of those things. All of those things add to our arousal levels. And arousal is what makes you react. So, if there was a car crash and I have to save my passenger next to me, I'd be in a state of high arousal where I am called to action. That's what we see with our dogs too. So if they hear a loud noise, that might put them in a state of high arousal where they're ready to act. They're getting into a, maybe that's a survival noise. Maybe they need to be ready to act. But I wanted to make a point that it's not one thing that causes them to go into high arousal. I like to think of arousal as a measuring cup here. It's because everything that happens to them throughout the day can add to this cup. It takes over 24 hours usually for arousal levels to go down completely. So everything that goes on can add to the behavior that you see. Because a lot of behavior that we think of as negative happens in a state of being over threshold, which over threshold is the top of the cup. It's all they can handle. They cannot handle anymore. So they kind of shut down or react badly. Usually, our perception is that it's badly. So let's see what would fill this cup up. So we might have, barking dog outside the enclosure. It fills it up a little bit. We might have maybe a really exciting time playing with our friend. Excitement can add to it too, so it fills it up. We might see a squirrel, a fast running squirrel that runs across the path, fills it up more. Maybe a loud truck passes by and it's pretty scary. That might fill it up a lot. Maybe a really scary stranger walks by. Maybe he looks at us and maybe even tries to talk to us. Well, that puts it over the top. And then we're over threshold. So we're over threshold. A dog cannot think or learn when they're over threshold. They're in a state of panic. It's survival mode at that point. So what we want to do is you can do two things to try to make this better. You can make the cup bigger and make their tolerance for the arousal, these highly stressful or exciting things, you can make the tolerance bigger, or you can find a way to lower it. You can drain it before it goes over that threshold. So things like calming behavior, training a calming behavior, putting more calmness into their daily life, that counteracts some of that high arousal because it's putting them in a state of low arousal. So it makes them tolerate, more of this this excitement and stress, and it can also make them, actually if they're in a higher stress state, maybe they're around here, maybe we'll drop them back down to here. So that's why we do these things. It's not just about, go to your place. It's about putting more calmness into their everyday life. Or, if they're out and, maybe they know how to settle, or they know how to go to a picnic table or their mat or something like that, maybe that will help them bring those levels lower when they're out in an exciting place, an exciting location. So just earlier, I took Rama out to walk by the dog park. He certainly didn't go into the dog park because I'm not a big fan, but I wanted to have some practice for him around other dogs because they are so exciting for him. So at first, he went over this threshold point And the behavior that you might see when they go over this point, when they're over threshold, is you usually see one of two things, and you probably know exactly what it is because I'm sure you've seen it before. The first thing that might happen is they will shut down. They are so excited, they're so over their limit, all they can do is freeze. So you might see them freeze, you might see them sit or lay down and not want to move. That's because they're over threshold. They cannot process anymore, so they're waiting until they can. It's actually not even a negative thing because they're just saying, I am right here and I cannot function until it moves down a little bit. And just that behavior where they're watching, they're waiting, it's gonna move that level down a little bit. It's their way to kind of process that because they're so overstimulated they just can't even function at that point. The second thing you might see is more of an action behavior where this is all filled up, it's overflowing, and it goes off like a gunshot. You might see them bolt, you might see them bite. It does not mean that they're bad dogs. It's that very famous trainer said, it's just behavior, and behavior is modifiable. Well, if you see that behavior, remember, it's just behavior. We can modify it. But right now, they're displaying that behavior not because they're a bad dog, but because they are over threshold, and it's no thought at that point. It's reaction. So when they are over threshold, very little you can do. They're not going to learn. All you can really do is remove them and get distance from whatever is causing them stress. Distance is your friend. If there's a big truck or a barking, lunging dog, there's going to be a point where they can process it. Maybe it's 20 feet away, maybe it's 50 feet away, maybe it's 100 feet away, but at some point the distance is going to be great enough that they can think. So increased distance is, number one. If they're way over that limit and they're not coming back down, you might just need to get them somewhere else. But let's say they're operating, higher level, they're displaying some negative behavior. There are some things you can do to lower it. We've seen that a little bit where what lowers arousal, calming behavior. You can't necessarily, it's hard to just reward like being calm. So what we do is we will reward the concept of being calm by rewarding the physiological effects of calmness. So they're laying down on the mat. That's an effect of calmness. They're laying down. We reward that. What else? They might see me ask Grandma for a chin touch. They can't really, that's a calming behavior. That's resting your head on the thing. That's going to lower arousal. What else? They pick up on your behavior too. So when I say something like, talk in a slow, low voice, take a deep breath, deliver treats slowly to the mouth. Those are all behaviors where they can pick up on the calmness that I'm projecting, and that'll help them lower that arousal level too. So there's differences. Tossing a treat, that's more of a high arousal fun behavior. So that might, if we want them to be excited so that they can get into what they're doing, I might toss a treat. If I want attention on me, I might toss a treat. Get it. But if I want calmness, I might say that's too exciting for them. I'm going to deliver that to their mouth slowly, maybe even take a breath before I release it, and use my calming marker word, like good, instead of a more snappy word, because they're going to pick up on that calming word too, especially if they're used to that being associated with calming behaviors. It'll be even better. It'll be even more lowering of that arousal level. What else? The way that long strokes, petting, long, slow pets, that's calming. Um, quick pats, you know, that's more like a fun behavior. That's more like higher arousal. I want you to be engaged with me. But if you want the arousal levels to be lower, that's you're going to be more conscious of like long and slow, and just kind of use that to use your hands to like show calm, you know, long calm behavior. You don't want snappy quick pats at that point, because once again they're picking up what you're putting out there. They're going to pick up your emotional state or what you're projecting as your emotion, your state of mind at that point. Let's see what else. Like a slow rub of the ears, that's calming. I like to use a type of it's called a Tellington touch technique, where you put your hands down and you lower them down the dog. When you lower them down the dog's side, you open up your hands like this, and then you scrunch your hands back up. So you would lower your hands out down the dog's sides and scrunch them back up. So I mean, that's one way to kind of radiate some calmness as well. So all of those things can kind of lower, to keep your arousal levels a little bit lower. Doing our calming behavior, our calming mat training is going to help your dog be able to stay. First of all, it's going to increase calmness, so it will increase overall the lower calming behavior, which is lower arousal behavior, and it's also going to help them where if you're out somewhere or they're too excited, you can ask for that settle response, and they're immediately going to make the association with their previous history of that reinforced calm behavior. It's a calming marker, and that's a good thing to have. It's a good way to change that state of arousal or start to. And I hope that made sense, because it's just an important way to start thinking a little bit differently.